allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Any changes? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Agenda is adopted. Approval of minutes, regular meeting, April 23rd, 2024.
Move to approve the minutes for April 23rd, 2024.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
I second.
Second. Any discussion, any omissions or errors in the minutes? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes approved. Public remarks. Anyone who make public remarks, please raise your hand. And come to the dais and please give your name and address, of course.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Kohler. I live at 31 Daniel Street. I am here tonight on behalf of the Board of Education. First, we would like to acknowledge and thank you for the time and effort that you have put into this year's budget process. We understand it's a daunting task, and we appreciate the careful consideration that you have given to the needs of this community and to the process as a whole. But it's also my pleasure to be here tonight to officially introduce you to our incoming superintendent, Dr. Timothy Van Tassel, who is joining us this evening. Some of you were able to meet Tim at the welcome reception held earlier tonight, but I'd like to take a minute to share with you a little bit more about him. After a thorough search, with the assistance of paid consultants, the Board of Education unanimously voted to appoint Dr. Van Tassel as our next superintendent of schools. Dr. Van Tassel holds several degrees, including a 6th year in educational leadership, as well as a Doctor of Education from the University of Connecticut. He also brings with him a wealth of professional experience in the field of education, having started his career as a 5th grade classroom teacher, served as both an elementary and middle school principal, an assistant superintendent right here in East Hampton, and superintendent in both Hebron and Suffield. These are all things you can easily find in a Google search. What I really would like to do is share some of the qualities that made the board so confident in this appointment. Throughout the interview process, Dr. Van Tassel demonstrated his vast knowledge of educational research, fiscal management, and strategic planning, among many other things. And while this was impressive, it was his calm and confident demeanor that stood out. Throughout our conversations, he expressed his belief that leadership is about empowering others. He also emphasized the importance of listening and observing, as well as the critical role of partnerships and relationship building that they play in the progress and growth of the community. Tim understands that the entire community plays a functional part in the success of our students, and he is particularly excited to return to this one. The board is thrilled to partner with him as we continue to move East Hampton schools forward, and we know that he is looking forward to working with all of you as well. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Timothy Van Tassel.
So I want to begin by just saying thank you, Kohler, and I want to first tell you just how thrilled I am to be back here in East Hampton. This is where I began my district leadership career, which is now since being here has spanned 11 years just at the district leadership level. And it's an honor to be back here. East Hampton has been a place very close to my heart. I have never forgot about my experiences here. There are so many familiar faces that I have seen since coming back and re-entering, and I look forward to being here with you all and working in a partnership with you. I could go through further. I know she had shared a lot about my history. Hopefully we'll get to know each other quite well over the next several years, many years, and I'll be able to share a little bit more about those experiences. But most importantly, it's about the partnership. There is something to be said for communities who work very well with one another, especially amongst elected officials. It's the hallmark of a high-functioning community. I know that East Hampton has so much going for it, and to be able to be a part of this community, its educational leadership position as superintendent of schools, I'm just honored to be here, so I look forward to working with all of you, getting to know you a lot more. My first day doesn't begin until July 1. I'm trying to wrap things up in the community of Suffield that I am in. But I do look forward to being here and being a part of this community with all of you. So thank you all very much. And thank you, Chair Crowell, for those nice words.
Thank you, Tim. And welcome. Further public remarks or comments?
Hi, Donald Scrad, Chief of East Hampton Ambulance. I'm just here tonight to kind of speak on behalf of my appreciation for the town council. Looking to include money for the Ambulance Association this year. Also speaking just on behalf of public safety. It's nice to actually see that their public safety was put as a priority this year on the budget in terms of including a new police officer in the budget. And further discussion tonight on the firehouse. Additionally, I'm a volunteer with the East Hampton Fire Department and lieutenant. I've been out at Cobalt for over 10 years now and certainly know the need for a new facility and how long it's been in the process. So again, I just want to show my support as a resident of this town and a chief of the Ambulance Association and support the fire department, the police, and certainly the ambulance and public safety. So thank you.
Anyone else desire to make public comments tonight? If not, we'll close public comments at this time. Item agenda 5, presentations. Do we have any this evening?
You have none, this.
Okay. No. Agenda item 6, bids and contracts. Do we have any?
None this.
Item 7, resolutions, ordinances, and policy proclamations. A, adoption of fair housing resolution.
This is if I may, this is an requirement for a number of the town's various activities related to housing. And basically what this document does is annually refresh the town's commitment to fair housing and non-discrimination in housing in the community. So that applies to any activity that we undertake that involves housing, whether it's regulation or it's construction or it's doling out of funds or what have you. It requires us, it states that the town will follow federal and state regulations to housing. So it's an annual activity, it's required. I'd really prefer you did it.
Is there a motion?
Move to adopt
With the resolution?
the fair housing resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any questions of the opponent? Not. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Fair housing resolution is adopted. Agenda item 8, continued business. A, subcommittee reports and updates. Do we have any subcommittee reports or updates?
There's one, yes, from the appointment subcommittee. We'll be doing a motion for an appointment a little bit later under appointments, but one issue that we've talked about in the past is that now that the budget is relatively over at this point in time, at least for the short haul, we still need to get on looking at increasing membership on a few committees via ordinance. We've talked about that before. We have people who want to serve on committees. These committees would really be well served to have a couple alternates. So that's the whole purpose. So I'd like to reiterate the need to look at that.
Thank you. Any other?
Yes, I'd like to report on the library. Really, positive, move forward to delivering books to, people who are shut in, seniors or someone that's had surgery, can't drive. You can contact, the library and give them your books that you desire. They're also going to be focusing on the Meals, on Wheels, who will be doing the delivery. It's a slow rollout, but it's a step in the positive direction to get reading materials out to our residents. And they're busy working on their strategic planning, with their survey, results and focus groups. And they are implementing a new policy for the community room, using key fobs.
Very good. Any questions, further discussion, any further reports? If not, we'll move on to item B, review, discussion, and possible action on Board of Finance recommended fiscal year 2024-2025 general government, Board of Education, debt service, and capital improvement budgets. Councilwoman Warner.
I make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2025 town general government budget in the amount of $18,942,617.
Is there a second? to
I'll
that motion?
second.
I can open that up to discussion. Is there any discussion, questions, or regarding the motion?
Would like to make some general comments about the budget if I could.
Certainly.
Mostly I just want to thank the Board of Education Superintendent, the Board of Finance. The budget that was presented to us, I thought was as responsible and frugal as was reasonable. When we first started the budget process, I think there was a general consensus that we'd be looking at a mill rate increase of 4 or more, and there was a little bit of panic. But because of the Board of Finance, Board of Education, Town Council, everybody working so well together this year, that mill rate increase has been, this budget document put in front of me today was even lower than it was yesterday. And it's now below 2. So while it's still an increase, it's much less of an increase than I think we initially thought it would be. And I think that's that speaks well to the way that the boards have worked together during this process. So I just wanted to make sure that I thank the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance for that work.
Any further discussion, comments on motion, first
Just-
motion?
The changes that you mentioned 2 weeks ago are in this.
Correct. No further discussion or comments? Those in favor of motion 1, budget to approve the, motion to approve the fiscal year 2025 general government budget in the amount of $18,942,617, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries unanimous.
I make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2025 Board of Education budget in the amount of $37,725,499.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? I would just point out one thing that sitting in on the Board of Finance hearings and their final deliberations, they were very complimentary of the Board of Ed. And the fact that the Board of Ed, after it submitted its original budget, went back to the drawing board and found, I think, 369,000 of additional cuts. And the fact that they brought that to the Board of Finance during their deliberations and work on the budget spoke highly. And our budget, or our motion, incorporates what the Board of Finance has done and without change. Oh, there's no further comments. Those in favor of motion 2, approval of fiscal year Board of Education budget in the amount of $37,725,499, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
I motion to direct that a town meeting be called for May 28th, 2025 2024, beginning at 6:15 PM in the town hall for the purpose of considering the town's fiscal year 2025 budgets and to immediately adjourn consideration of the budgets to referendum on June 4th, 2024, in accordance with the state statute and town charter, section 4.1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion adopted.
I motion to approve a resolution allocating American Rescue Plan funds number 8 to allocate 350,000 of these funds to the capital improvement funds for road repair and maintenance.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion or questions? If not, vote those in favor of the allocation of American Rescue Funds number 8 to allocate 350,000 of these funds to the capital improvement fund for road repair and maintenance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried.
I motion to approve the fiscal year 2025 capital improvements plan in the amount of $2,369,355, including the purchase of vehicles and equipment from the respective sinking funds and other sources and funding from the LoCIP grants in the amount of $139,303 and ARPA funds in the amount of $350,000 and contingent on transfer from the general fund to current taxes in the amount of $1,265,752.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions regarding the matter? If not, those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. I would point out that for the town meeting and budget referendum, Alan Hurst is being appointed the moderator for that day, those meetings. Move on to agenda item 9, new business, review and possible action on the purchase and sale agreement of 11 Skinner Street. Mr. Cox, would you like to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The council has in front of it a purchase and sale agreement that is the culmination of a number of discussions and admittedly several months of discussion with the owner of 11 Skinner Street and with the council about the desirability of the acquisition of that property for the purpose of refitting it as a replacement firehouse. And various matters related to price and how the process would proceed. The purchase and sale agreement is as I described in my memo, the first formal step in a process of acquisition. It outlines the responsibilities of the town to move forward with its final review, its final due diligence on the property. It calls for appraisals of the property. It also calls for the appraisals of other properties that the town owns that may be involved in the ultimate transaction, depending on final agreements with the developer, or rather with the owner of the 11 Skinner property. The process also outlines the approval process necessary for the town. In order to move forward on an acquisition of property, and frankly, the sale of property, the Board of Finance needs to have an opportunity to express its opinion. The Planning and Zoning Commission needs to do a review under state statute and express its opinion. And perhaps most important, the town meeting, so the residents and electors of the town get the opportunity to make a final vote. It's anticipated that that vote, which will probably happen in the next 5 months or so, it's anticipated that that town meeting will include a vote not only on the sale of those properties I mentioned before, currently owned by the town for fire purposes, but also the acquisition, of course, of 11 Skinner Street. It'll also talk about the financing, and not only the financing of the acquisition, which is described in the purchase and sale agreement at $2.55 million, but also the retrofitting of that building for, as I said, fire purposes. So the outline, as I said, describes all of that and gives us a time frame within which to accomplish all of those activities. The short time frame is the first part of that. We basically have a little bit of time to get our appraisals finished. We anticipate, based on the conversations we've had with appraisers, that that's about a month or a month and a half. And then we have another 3 months or as much as 4 months if we need it to finish the rest of the process. So 4 or 5 months from now, we ought to be at a town meeting with a good understanding of what we're going to ask the residents to approve. As I said, the most significant figure in the document is the sale price, right now at $2.55 million. There is a series of caveats or attachments to that, conditions to that, most notably based on the appraisal. It gives the opportunity for both the town and the seller to either renegotiate the deal or back out of the deal if the properties don't appraise above that sale price. So that's the document you have in front of you. I will note that for the purposes of the council, there was one change that came out as part of the final review with the seller and with the attorneys, and that's on page 4 of the document. It is highlighted there in the version that you received tonight, and it provides for the seller that opt-out that I mentioned just now with respect to the sale price. Happy to answer any questions that there may be that I can answer at this point. But otherwise, this is a sale agreement that's very similar to ones we have used in the past.
Are there any questions, discussion?
I have a question. It relates to down the road, any contamination issues that could come up as far as the environment, OSHA, or, things like that.
Sure.
Are we liable, or does the seller have liability with that?
So the seller has undertaken a fair amount of remediation work at the site. We've seen most of those environmental documents at this point. There is some ongoing conversation with the state Department of Public Health and the State Department of Energy and Environment about what the final levels would be allowed to be. There is some final discussions going on whether it's all the way to residential levels, which would anticipate a person living there all the time for their life, or whether there's some other acceptable level. And I want to add to what I just said. The important thing is that what would be an acceptable level, it would be something that would be encapsulated, right? Most of it's been removed, but there are some things that might be underneath the floor of the building, for example, that aren't easily removed and would be encapsulated by the floor. And so there would be no contact, but there would be residual amounts perhaps left on the property. We've seen those evaluations through phase 3 and would be receiving as part of our final due diligence work the last reports on removals and any contaminants that might be left on the property. In terms of liability, would have to do the final review of whether the liability will fall on him, although he's not the generator of it, or whether it gets sort of washed out and would ultimately become the town's.
Okay. Thank you.
Jack?
The property card for that property, the current appraised valuation is 635,000 and the replacement value is 1.3 million. How do we get to 2.5 million?
I think probably a few things. Age of those numbers. As you know, the town does full revaluations of properties about every 5 years. So that, and we have one coming up next year. So that number is could be as much as 4 years old. Our assessments do react to certain kinds of permits that get issued on an annual basis. And since this particular owner took ownership of the property, we know that he has had permits out for roof replacements. There's been door changes to the building. There has been interior electrical and plumbing changes to the building. Most notably, however, I would say to you that it is perhaps the market that has had that most significant impact on the cost. that would bring it to that 2.5 million, if in fact it appraises at that level. That answer?
There are no permits listed on the property card.
Those permits have been issued through the building department. They may not have gotten through
To the
yet over
assessor.
into the assessment process because all of that assessment activity is so focused on the October 1 date.
Okay.
Good question.
Question?
Dave, do you have the agreement in front of you?
I do, yes.
Okay, I'll go to page 2, under purchase price in section 2.2 and under other properties.
Yes.
Right off the back, the first sentence says, both parties, purchaser and seller, agree that at seller's option, sole and absolute option, the purchase price may be paid by purchaser in part by the transfer to the seller of essentially one or both of the existing fire stations. Why the uncertainty? The uncertainty being, we don't have it as part of the agreement. Why is it left up to his sole and absolute option? And the reason I ask that is because we go ahead with the acquisition. I'm not really sure it's in the best interest of the town to have two additional fire stations available. That's my concern. So certainly the seller is fully aware, having, been in East Hampton and worked in East Hampton, what those properties are and have seen them. Why the hesitancy? Why is it not certain that there would be a transfer? What led up to that discussion?
So when we originally drafted the language, the option, so to speak, was the town's. And I think the seller, in this case, wanted to have the option not to take. That could be a function of perhaps where they are in their, I'll call it, career. That could be a function of perhaps the likely timing difference between the acquisition of the 11 Skinner property and when we could actually surrender the other properties. There will be undoubtedly a time delay.
Sure.
And so I would only be speculating, but I suspect that that could be part of it as well. Frankly, it could be where they appraise and whether they appraise higher than he believes their value is. Undoubtedly, to answer the unasked question, undoubtedly the town will dispose of those properties, in my opinion, once they are no longer necessary for fire purposes, for emergency services purposes.
Yeah,
There's
well,
really no reason to hang on.
precisely. That's exactly it. But given the market, certainly for industrial and commercial properties, which is perhaps a little weak. My concern is just how long might we be hanging on to those properties? And again, if in fact this agreement could swap out the properties, it would be great. And
Certainly that's desirable for us.
yeah,
But this was language added at the request of the seller. Other than asking and encouraging, I didn't feel like I could say, no, that's going to kill the deal.
okay.
Any further questions?
I have one quick one. David, I'm not quite sure how to ask this, but is there such a thing as like a state fire commission or something? I guess what I'm asking is, does somebody have to inspect this from the state and says, yes, this building can be used for a fire department? Is there such a thing or no?
From what perspective?
I mean, can we can just do what we want to do and make it a firehouse? Or does the state come in and say, well, this isn't gonna work as a firehouse?
No, not the state.
Okay.
Certainly there are, I'll call them standards and guidelines related to construction of firehouses that would come from NFPA or other organizations like that. frankly, our planning and zoning commission will have their say here as
Yeah.
well. Because there's a local zoning regulation in place that we would have to deal with. In addition to the state requirement related to the land acquisition.
I guess my question kind of something is there, the height of doors, the height of roof, there, things like that. I didn't know if there's something like that, or if we say it's okay, it's fine.
Generally, if we say it's okay, it's fine, but like I said, there are some standards out there. The trucks will fit.
Yeah, right, I
I'm
mean,
pretty sure about that.
they're probably, I'm sure they're gonna fit a lot better than they do now.
It's probably true. But those are usually the kinds of things that people doors in our. The decisions are ours locally. The chief can tell me I'm wrong. Locally, and
I figured you checked into this, but.
Yeah. And NFPA might have some things to say about what should be in a firehouse and other standards of that sort, but we get to decide how it looks and how it fits and how it fits and how it operates.
Can we put the siren back on that? That was it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I would just point out one thing that, this is not a complete building or a firehouse by any means, and it's going to require substantial amount of additional funding to build it out. And so it's going to be a tough, in my opinion, a tough sell in the community. So it's going to require the work of all of our citizens and certainly those in the firehouse and emergency services community to help support this and as we go forward. So I just put that on the record.
The purpose of I should just say, just to sort of set the stage for what you just talked about in the communication and the discussion with the community of sort of why, right? Notwithstanding the age and the condition of the existing facilities that we have, and part of the discussion that even started at the Capitol Committee a year or two ago was about whether we should begin to invest in those facilities or we should look otherwise. Ultimately, the decision was to not invest just yet, but to start to investigate where else we might go. Two, this is a discussion that would result in the consolidation of two of our firehouses into one. We would anticipate constructing this building to accommodate not only today's needs, but really tomorrow's needs. We would be talking about things that are going to perhaps be difficult conversations for some folks in the community, but we would be talking about the living in that house. And much like we see in firehouses elsewhere, that are professional firefighters or individuals who are serving long shifts that are going to be living in that house. And so we're talking about perhaps bunk rooms. We're talking about making sure, of course, we have a kitchen. There's kitchens today in the firehouses, but making sure that we have the right kitchen facilities. Meeting facilities for a department that right now has 60 or so people on it. 65 and space for them to meet. Space for the community to meet, which is an added benefit for people in our community that have organizations that are constantly looking for space. But it's really about making sure that we have space for the future. The chief was in front of you not too long ago, talking about the new regulations that are coming out, speaking of OSHA, the new regulations that are coming out. And part of the capital purchasing activities and part of that discussion was about, frankly, the washing devices that are necessary for turnout gear and making sure that we have the space to accommodate what should be the properly sized equipment for washing the gear for those 60 or 65 people that serve our community every day. So that's what we're really talking about, is setting up a space and a building that can serve our department decades into the future as our needs as a community change. And we're able to respond to them with that space where we're just not really able to respond to those needs in the future in our existing spaces.
Thank you.
That's the primer for what's to come.
Are there any further comments? If not, vote on the motion.
Did somebody make the motion?
I didn't hear a
Oh,
motion.
maybe we didn't.
We didn't make a motion.
I mean, I'm jumping the gun. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward to purchase 11 Skinner Street in the amount of $2,550,000.
Is that the wording we want in the motion
No,
or
I think what,
purchase and sale agreement?
council, yes, I think what the council member intended to say was a motion to approve the purchase and sale agreement regarding the purchase of 11 Skinner Street.
That's exactly what I meant to say.
I did think I heard that.
Exactly it.
That's what we heard.
Is there a second?
Second,
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion, further discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Nay.
One nay, 6 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Nine B, consideration of fiscal year 2024-2025 public water system operating budget and water rate recommendation.
I'm going to invite Scott Clayton, the Public Utilities Administrator, back up for what my fingers are crossed will be his last presentation. And a water budget for us.
Nice to see you back so soon.
Yeah. So in front of you, you have 24-25 public water system operating budget and rate recommendations. The first read, will go to public hearing, June 4th. The operating budget came in at $242,618 for the two, well, actually 3 water systems that I budget for, even though the town only owns 2 of them at the present time. The third one, once they get enough customers, the town will inherit it. So I continually budget for that. That money doesn't come into play in the budget column. The $242,618 is a 0.37% increase over last year's budget. There was an $887 increase, and most of that is for capital. The systems are getting older, and are going to require some upgrades. We try to do filters as often as we can. Iron content in the wells is very high, so it requires filters. This budget will not require an increase in the water rates this year. The water rates remain the same as they were last year. We increased enough last year to cover our expenditures. PFAS testing has increased a little, so that's part of this budget. Our systems do have PFAS in them, which we use carbon filters to get rid of. We had no violations whatsoever for Village Center water system or the Royal Oaks water system. Pretty much that's my presentation. I mean, you have the budget in front of you. The only thing it requires is to okay to send it to public hearing. Again, this is the first read. I'll be back after the public hearing for a final okay in the budget.
do we need to make a motion to send to public hearing?
We don't need to,
We don't need to.
No.
I'd just like your blessing to send it to public hearing.
Bless you.
you're blessed.
Is there any questions?
Not right
Good.
this
Good
time.
Just as a reminder, as Scott alluded to, the public hearing, that public hearing is held by the WTCA. They have been, in addition to managing and handling, if you will, everything related to the sanitary sewer side of our system, they, on your behalf, handle the initial review and the public hearings related to the water budget, but the town council takes the final action on the water side, including the rate decision. So you'll get a recommendation, which Scott will talk about on the 11th from the WPC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Under new business, 9C, discussion and possible action on land use enforcement official job description.
Thank you. The next item you have in front of you is a job description for a land use enforcement officer. This is a position that the town has not had for perhaps ever, but certainly not for quite some time. The responsibilities the primary responsibilities for land use enforcement, including primarily zoning and inland wetlands related activities, fell to the planning and zoning official. As part of our discussions that we've had recently about enforcement and regulatory activities in the town, and as part of some conversations I've had with our previous planning and zoning official, it made sense to try and pull some of this apart and give that person, that is, give the planning and zoning official, some support in the enforcement and the regulatory side of land use. So I've asked the council to consider two items. One is the job description you have in front of you for a land use enforcement officer. And two, as you described and put into the town budget, a modification that allocates some funds in the land use office to cover the cost of this individual, which would be a part-time individual. You can see in the description that the job is, as you can see, primarily focused on various inspections and regulatory activities, enforcement activities for both zoning and subdivision work, as well as inland wetlands. It also provides for the possibility that if the town's blight officer, which happens to currently fall on the building official, if that individual needs some assistance, this person could be available for that purpose as well. So it really becomes, that's why it's titled land use enforcement as opposed to something else. It becomes an individual who can provide some assistance across the board in that department. Happy to answer any questions about the duties or the responsibilities or how we see it working, but generally it's an employee part-time in the land use office reporting to the planning and zoning.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the updated job description for the land use enforcement officer.
Second,
Motion made and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? I will note that this is an important one of many steps we will be taking over the next few months with regard to zoning, planning, inland wetlands, and the enforcement of regulations and modification of regulations if necessary. Just a question, does this add to our approved positions in the town so that
We count the full, for the number that's in the budget, for
Yeah.
example, we count the full-time positions for that, although we've had a habit of counting the fire marshal as well. So it's, the number that you see in the budget is the full-time positions plus the fire marshal. So it would not change that, and certainly it does add a half a position to the town, but it's not one that we track, so to speak.
questions, further questions?
Just one deep. This is, so this is a brand new position for the town, right? As far as,
We've not had one in quite a long time.
Quite a
We
long
had one in the
time.
past.
yeah, okay, that's great. And in fact, we adjusted the budget to accommodate this going forward, didn't we?
We did.
In response to, you know, our issues and, okay, fantastic. Very good.
No further discussion. Vote on the matter. Those in favor of the land use enforcement officer job description, position description, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay.
Thank you.
Carries. Approved.
Okey-dokey.
9D, review and possible action regarding police department policies, general orders.
I'll invite Chief Wessner up to the podium and he can talk with you about the general orders. We got to vamp a little while, it's all the way at the back. Make his way through about the general orders and the changes that requested by this.
Good evening. I apologize for being a little late, so I ended up in the back, so. Good evening. Tonight you have 5 general orders that are before you. As all of you know, it's our ongoing process to achieve Tier 1 accreditation in August. And to do so, we're my new lieutenant and I are making good progress for that goal. So before you are the 5 general orders. The first one is complaints that allege misconduct by law enforcement personnel. It's an existing general order that was approved by council 2 years ago. It required some minor modifications on how we can investigate complaints made against police personnel. Specifically, when we can drug test them, alcohol test them, send out certain things to be tested that we would need to complete the investigation. The next one is a new statewide policy concerning seatbelt use for any person that is being transported in a municipal vehicle, specifically a police vehicle. This is in regards to Public Act 23-87. It's a direct result of the tragedy that occurred in New Haven, where an individual was being transported in the back of a large cargo van, for the lack of better terms, and there was no seatbelt present, and the brakes were applied, and he was unfortunately paralyzed as a result of that action. So this public act is required to be modified and instituted by our department. The Post Council, our governor's body for all of our rules and regulations, actually came out with a model policy and request departments at a minimum at least adopt the minimum policy. And they get larger or stronger, but you have to at least adopt the minimum. As a result of that policy, it's kind of a waterfall effect. It affects several other GOs that currently have language about seatbelt usages. So you'll see GO 5.3 equipment and GO 5.11 prisoner transport and general order 10.3, my apologies, just 5.3 and 5.11 that also deal with transporting prisoners. They had to be modified to basically state to refer to the new statewide model policy. So if it changes, we don't have to go back and change all the general orders again. And the last one, general order 10-10.3 records administration, again, is an existing general order that we had to change to reflect the current practices of the organization, specifically how we deal with our records management system, and things that go around that age. So that's the policies, the general orders for you tonight. Here to request the approval.
Thank you. Any questions, Chief? Or motion?
Does the seatbelt thing require any changes to our existing equipment?
No, as a matter of fact, the town policy requires town employees to wear seatbelts while they're driving town vehicles. All town vehicles. Our police department policy says that we will wear seatbelts. There are a couple situations where we don't have to wear them, but they're very few. We already have that policy, but the Public Act requires there to be discipline specifically in the new statewide policy that is actually to a certain degree taken away from me and put into the hands of the legislative body of Post. And they, if a violation is brought forward to them by me, they can actually convene and decide whether an officer's certification should be suspended or revoked. So it is a fairly strict change that was instituted in the Public Act, but we've always had a policy that you wear the seatbelts. Hopefully that answers your question.
May I just ask one clarification from the chief, just
Certainly.
so that you'll say this into the record? Not only did it require not only employees to wear seatbelts, but also required seatbelts to be placed on prisoners?
That is correct. And to further answer your question, all of our police cars in the rear containment area and in the rear of the vehicles that don't have a rear containment area specifically set up to transport prisoners, all have systems built in to secure the prisoner. All of our cars right now have half cages, so even if there was an accident, they're kind of like in a cocoon. If anyone would want to take a ride in one, I'd be more than happy to offer that up. But they're not very comfortable, to say the least, but they all have them in it. As a matter of fact, our brand new car actually has a new system where you don't have to reach over to the seatbelt and undo it. It's actually, for the lack of better terms, held in place out of the way by Velcro. So when you put the prisoner in, you just grab it off the Velcro, tear it off there and reach over and actually snap it in place. It's a lot easier to apply the seatbelt to the prisoner. But all of our vehicles have always had that containment system in it. We're just now putting in the discipline section if you violate it. And if you recall, all of our vehicles that are designed to transport prisoners all have in-car camera systems that face forward and also cover the prisoner containment unit. So when we transport a prisoner, the camera's turned on, so everything is recorded. And then we save that recording as part of our in-car camera, body worn camera process.
Thank you.
No, I'm all set. I don't need to say more.
I didn't hear that.
The vice chairman was wondering whether she should volunteer to go for a ride and test this out.
They're small. There's not a lot of room back there. But you know what Beretta used to say. Eric.
You want a motion?
I think we need a motion.
Move to approve the, excuse me, 5 general orders proposed by Chief Lester.
We have a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the 5 general orders as presented by the police department, chief of police. I will note that we're getting the old hands at this almost once a month. We get a set of revised or updated orders, so not only are we getting well versed in this, but the you and the lieutenant are very knowledgeable of what's going on. And I hope you do get the certification and, you know,
There's a few more that you'll have on your on the agenda between now and July, but we're very, very close. Very, very close.
thank you.
Thank you.
So, any discussion, any questions? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried, their orders are approved.
And I was, thank you.
Town managers report. Mr. Cox.
Thank you. As always, the written report is with the town council packet as well on the various locations on the town's website. I'll highlight, if I may, 3 things that are on the report, and I'll mention one item that is not. My regular topic is the update on Wapawag. That contractor has been on site now for a couple of weeks, right? And has bypass in place and is working on getting his materials in place for cofferdams and various other dewatering that he needs. Must be getting close to finishing that up. Still in process, getting that taken care of so he can get into the meat of the activity, putting in the replacement culvert. Nonetheless, it's moving along pretty nicely. He's well equipped, certainly, and has been moving along well. The Recreation Department and the Conservation Lake Commission is happy to announce that the town, as many of you saw, received a grant in the amount of about $46,000 in change to assist with working on hydrilla that's been found or was identified in Lake Pocatapog a little while ago. And we'll be using those funds to plan out and execute some directed herbicide attacks, I suspect, to get rid of that invasive plant. As a reminder, hydrilla is most commonly associated with the Connecticut River at this point. This is the variety that is found in the river, and we're hoping to expand, if you will, the footprint of this grant by working with the entities that are coordinating with the Lower Connecticut River Valley Council of Governments in attacking this in our portion of the Connecticut River. So we think we'll be able to expand some resources there. Sean Mullen, the director of the Recreation Department, is communicating with the COG now to see how we can make those dollars go even a little bit farther. The last thing from the report I'll mention is that, as the chief reported in the police section, Heroes, our new canine, and his officer companion, Warwick, are completing up their training here in the next couple of weeks and should be on duty fairly soon. So we'll be back to a department that includes a canine, a well-trained canine in all that we need him to do. So that's coming soon, and I'm sure when we get the opportunity, we'll bring Heroes in to meet everybody, because now I suspect he can interact with other people. Get the thumbs up from the chief. He can now interact with other people and be okay about that. I'll mention also that we're not just bringing dogs in these days. Officer Picar will come in and visit you at your next meeting. Officer Picar is retiring after many years of service to the community, and we'll celebrate him a little bit in that last week of May. The last thing I'll mention that is not in my report, in the written version of my report, is that about 3 years ago, the town applied for a grant through the federal government, through the state, from the federal government, to replace the senior transportation bus. Well, guess what? It's finally coming. That grant got rolled over, and finally, apparently, they've made the bus. They've painted the bus, they've fitted the bus, and it says East Hampton Seniors on it. And we'll come tomorrow morning to the town. We'll take possession of it. We'll do our paperwork, and within the next several days, we'll have it out on the road serving our community. So the beauty of that particular grant, because of its timing during the pandemic, there is no local match. So while there normally is a 20% match to replace a bus that costs about $126,000, we're getting this one completely paid for by the federal government and the state using those grant funds. So exciting news for us. It's replacing a vehicle that we acquired in 2008 and has served us faithfully and sometimes unfaithfully since then. But it's still on the road and doing great things for our community. So looking forward to having its replacement soon. So those are my comments for this evening. If anyone has any questions, I'm certainly willing to answer them.
The bus does point to point, right? Isn't that what it does?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a scheduled
Sure.
for most of its trips these days. It's a scheduled activity where someone can call in and I would like to get to the senior center. I would like to get to this medical appointment. And to the extent we have within the time frame of our schedule, we will help them out, and there's no charge for that. It also gets used by the senior center when it's available to handle trips for the senior center when they have small groups going on trips. It's a 12-passenger bus. So when they have folks that a small group that's going on a trip, they can use that bus as well and avoid those transportation costs. I will mention that I'll use this as a little bit of a segue to another item that's not in my report, but next week or your next meeting, I've asked a representative from River Valley Transit to come in and give you a presentation really as a means of talking to the community about the Extra Mile program. This is a program that is an on-demand rapid transit type program for anyone in the community. Whether you're a young person who doesn't have a vehicle and wants to get somewhere, or you're an older adult member of our community who doesn't want to use their car or can't use their vehicle and wants to get somewhere in the center populous area of the community. You can call up River Valley Transit for its extra mile program. 15 or 20 minutes. Think Uber or Lyft in this regard. Within about 15 or 20 minutes, that vehicle will arrive at your door and take you where you want to go, whether it's Stop and Shop, the library, the town hall, wherever here in that, like I said, that core of the town. We'll take you there and drop you off for $1.75. If you're lucky enough to be an older adult, you don't have to pay anything. But in 2 weeks, Brendan Garrity from River Valley Transit will be here to talk to you a little bit about that. The reason I bring that up is because that will be a great partner to our bus and allow that some of those in-town trips that get used to bring somebody to the senior center or to the library or to some of those trips that get done by us today could be done by this service, allowing that vehicle to handle medical trips that might take it farther away from town and might take it out of service for a little while, or to handle trips for the senior center. So it's a good supplement, and I'm really excited about how those two things might work together to make moving people around our community a little bit better.
Thank you.
Now, those are my comments.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Town manager? Thank you, David. Item 11, appointments.
Yes, the appointment subcommittee met this evening and interviewed Kathy Horan for the last open full term on or position on inland wetlands. And that being said, we would like to move to nominate Kathy Horan of 8 Old Coach Road to the last full open position on inland wetlands. And that would be for the term ending June 1 of 2026.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any questions or discussion? If not, signify by saying aye. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Didn't hear any. Item 12, tax refunds.
Mr. Chair, I would like to return $798.39 to the rightful owners, the fine people of East Hampton.
Is there a second?
I second.
Motion made and seconded to refund
$798.39.
$798.39. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. I have it. Should be returned. We are now open for public remarks. If there's anyone who desires to make public comment or public remarks, please rise and I'll recognize you. Going once, going twice. Close public remarks. Agenda item 14, communications and correspondence and announcements. There's the board and commission summary in your packet, which you can read at your leisure. Get a preview of what's happening in all the boards and commissions and departments within our town. Item B, invitation for VFW regarding Memorial Day Parade. This is set for Memorial Day, Monday, May 27th. And we are invited to march in the parade or submit a float. Now, I don't know if anyone is desirous of chairing a committee and finding a float. Otherwise, we're going to use our 2 feet. Gathering place is at the high school, North Maple Street at 8:30 on May 27th. Look forward to seeing you all there. I think that's it for correspondence.
Yes, sir.
That being the last item, The last item is agenda item 15.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn. For second, you're adjourned. Thank you all. Oh,
No.
right into budget like the Democrat.